Hi everyone, I am honored to introduce our guest speaker for the communication session at the Human Advantage Conference. Today I am with my colleague Richard Chataway, who is the CEO of BVNH Consulting UK, the author of a wonderful book, The Behavior Business, and also one of the BVA family champion for communication. And now we are joined by Professor Jonah Berger, marketing professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and internationally best-selling author of 3 books that I have loved personally: Contagious, Invisible Influence, and The Catalyst. Dr. Berger is a world-renowned expert on change, word of mouth, influence, consumer behavior, and how product, ideas, and behavior catch on. He has published, I think, over 50 articles in top-tier academic journals, teach Wharton's highest rated online course, and popular outlets like the New York Times and Harvard Business Review often cover his work. So a lot. He's keynoted hundreds of events, including our events, and often consults for organizations like Google, Apple, Nike, and the Gates Foundation. So welcome, Jonah, to the Human Advantage Conference.
Hi, Jonah. Thanks for joining us, and it's a great pleasure to have you here today. First of all, I guess I wanted to ask you about why things catch on or go viral. I guess it's something that all of us who work in communications are a bit obsessed with, and we all want to achieve, but very rarely do. In your book Contagious, which, like Eric, I thought was brilliant, you outlined 6 principles that make things become popular. I guess since 2013 and the book came out, there's been a kind of explosion in available channels for us in communications, especially in social media. I guess how could you tell us how that's changed or shaped your thinking on how things become popular?
Yeah, I think when the book came out, people often ask me, "Oh, why didn't you write about all the most recent examples of why things went viral?" So there was a New York Times review, I think, that said, "Oh, he doesn't talk about the Harlem Shake or whatever it is." And my goal in writing the book wasn't actually to talk about the most recent examples of things that caught on, went viral, or got word of mouth. My goal was to outline a framework of what drives people to talk and share. And I think my favorite books are the books that 5, 10, 15 years later, even after they come out, are equally good as when they came out initially. And timeless examples actually are a lot more important than most recent examples, because while an example may be recent, 10 years later, it's not going to be. And so, I think the good news is because Contagious is about why people share, not what they share, many of those reasons haven't changed. The psychology of why we talk about things, why we share things, why we pass them on with friends, that's not new. I didn't invent that, right? That's been happening for thousands of years. Cavemen and women shared things with one another. Hundreds of years ago, people shared things with one another. And so the motivations to look good, to share things that are top of mind, the fact that emotions drive sharing, all of that is ancient and not new. And so even though the channels have changed that we share things through, the motivations have not. And so I think much has stayed the same. What I will say, though, is on the margin, there have been some changes or shifts, right? So if you look, there's certainly been more of a shift online. So most word of mouth is offline. When I wrote the book, only about 7 to 10% of all word of mouth is online. Now it's edging closer to 12 or 15%, but it's nowhere near the 60 or 70% that we might think. And so online has become more important. I also think some of the motives for sharing on the margin have changed, right? What things we might be triggered by in the environment have shifted. The dynamics of platforms have shifted a bit. But those 6 key steps, social currency, triggers, emotion, public, practical value, and stories, those were the same before I wrote the book. They're the same when the book came out, and they haven't changed. How we apply, as a communications professional, as a marketing professional, how we apply those principles may have shifted a little bit based on the environment that we're dealing with. But the principles themselves, the motivations have stayed very much.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think that's a really important point to remember, that I guess evolution doesn't work that fast. That we as people haven't fundamentally changed over the course of the last 10 years, and our motivations accordingly. And I guess with that in mind, one sort of challenge that we sometimes get from clients, I guess, is that we talk about, for example, our current circumstances and the current context in which we live, and the kind of post-COVID world, for example. And therefore, has COVID, for example, changed us, and how the way we can influence people changed? Do you think, is there any impact specifically around COVID and the impact that's had on the world over the last couple of years that's kind of shaped your thinking on that, and how we can make things go viral?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that COVID has done is it's forced us all to change, right? Working
Mm-hmm.
from home, ordering things online. And now, as we come out, hopefully out, or move towards out of COVID, or at least a little bit out of COVID, we have the opportunity now to sit back and say, well, which of these things do we want to keep, and which one of these things do we want to go back to normal? I think many companies said, oh, we'll work from home because we have to. And now some companies said, oh, we need to be back in the office because we have to. But why do we have to? It's actually the best way for people to work. For some jobs and some parts of some jobs, certainly it's definitely the best place. For other parts of other jobs, it may not be the best place. For some jobs, being back in the office may have no value, and it may actually be better for the company to allow people to work remotely, because you can get a better workforce and they're happier and they can spend more time because they don't have to have an hour and a half commute each way. And so I think what smart companies are doing is not thinking about what they have to do, but the opportunities that COVID have provided us, the learnings we can gain from these shifts in consumer and customer behavior, and what we should do as a result. Same with digital marketing. Same with selling people online rather than physical stores. What are stores good for? Should we get rid of stores? No. But do we need stores? Right? What do stores add above and beyond digital? What are they good at? What are they not good at? And how can we use that to be more effective? And I think that's what smart companies are doing.
It's really interesting, because I think if you think of, I guess, there's been a lot of talk, and certainly clients that we speak to, about digital transformation, and we help them with a lot of challenges around that. And what's been interesting, I guess, our experience with that in COVID is that it's just accelerated existing trends, I guess, if you see what I mean. And I guess, it kind of works both ways, doesn't it? Because obviously we're seeing companies like Amazon are opening physical stores and moving it back into that world. So it's not necessarily one way traffic in that sense.
And I think smart companies think about, well, why do I have a store? What is a store for? Digital is important. Yes.
And maybe, Jonah, you mentioned that things have not evolved so rapidly since the launch of Contagious. So could you, for our audience, summarize your famous acronym steps? How to really be successful?
So STEPS stands for the 6 key drivers of why people talk and why they share. Social currency is the first S. T for triggers. E is for emotion. P is for public. The second P is practical value. And the second S is stories. And those 6 key drivers of why people talk, why they share, and all sorts of things to catch on. From products, services, to ideas. It's not random luck, chance why some things succeed and others fail. The more we understand the science behind mouth and social transmission, we can engineer products and services and ideas to be more successful.
Okay, thanks a lot. Good and rapid summary, and for sure we encourage our audience to read the book to know more. You have also a wonderful example which illustrates how to use each of these drivers.
Oh yeah, sure. Definitely, check out my website. There's a whole bunch of resources there with more information about each of the principles and how to apply them.
Brilliant. I wanted to ask you as well, I guess, about your most recent book, The Catalyst, and there obviously you outline 5 factors that impede change and how to mitigate them. And I guess relevant to what you, for example, that you just gave about those businesses, how businesses are adapting the post-COVID world and remote working versus being back in the office. I guess it would be great to hear your perspectives on that in terms of how those factors, I guess, apply in that scenario. What are the things that are impeding those changes that you mentioned, that the ability for us to make those changes that are necessary in the post-COVID world?
It's been an interesting time to be writing about and thinking about change. Obviously, we were dealing with an immense amount of change even before COVID. So you talked about digital transformation and the like. And, I wrote The Catalyst in part because of having worked with various companies and organizations. They all had the same problem, which is they all had something they wanted to change, right? The marketers and the salespeople wanted to change customer minds. Leaders wanted to transform organizations. Startups wanted to change industries. Nonprofits wanted to change the world. But as we all know, change is really hard, right? Often we push, we pressure, we cajole, and nothing happens. So the question I sort of wondered is, could there be a better way? Could there be a better way to change minds and drive action, not pushing, but by doing something else? And that's what The Catalyst is all about. It's a different approach to change. It's really about thinking about why people change and why they don't, and how by removing barriers can we make change more likely. And so it's been a lot of fun working with different companies around this time, both in COVID-related things and otherwise, and thinking about how to remove barriers to change.
Great. And I think one of the things that I think that our audience would be really interested to hear, I guess, your perspective on is that in terms of those hurdles to change and removing those barriers, which I guess is a really important part of everything we do in behavioral science. I guess the whole concept of making it easy is about removing hurdles to change, isn't it? Which of those hurdles do you think marketers most commonly fall foul of, and why do you think that is?
I think in marketers in particular, the Catalyst has a framework called the Reduce framework. Marketers tend to fall most prey to the R, which is reactance, right? When we push people, they often push back. They often do the exact opposite of what we want them to do. When ad comes on the television, we switch the channel. When an email comes in from a marketer that we're not expecting, we delete it. We avoid or ignore persuasion attempts to avoid being persuaded. Even worse, we counter argue. We think about all the reasons why what someone is suggesting is not something we want to do. And so I think marketers' intuition is, well, let's push people more, right? Let's add more facts, more figures, more reasons, more information. If I just show them one more ad, they'll come around. And the problem is that doesn't work, right? Because the more we push them, the more they dig their heels in and resist. And so really at the core, what we need to do is give them back some agency, allow for agency. We need to stop trying to persuade them and encourage them to persuade themselves. We need to stop trying to sell so much and get them to buy in. And so in the book, I talk about a variety of ways to do this, from asking rather than telling, from providing a menu or giving people choice, highlighting a gap between attitudes and actions. A variety of strategies sort of give them back some sense of control or freedom. The more they feel like they're in the driver's seat, the more interested they'll be in helping us out.
Okay. Jonah, maybe a last question. What single piece of advice would you give communicators and marketers to drive lasting change?
Yeah, to drive lasting change, I think you need to understand your customer. If there's one thing, it's understanding your customer. And customer there is in quotes, right? So some of us don't think we have a customer. If I'm a nonprofit and I'm trying to get people to donate money, I don't think I have a customer. I'm not selling anything. Well, but you do have a customer. Your customer is a donor. If you're trying to change behavior within an organization, your employees are your customer, and they're a customer, they're not buying something from you. But if you don't understand them and how they work and why they're not doing what you want them to do in the first place, it's going to be really hard to get them to change. And so it's not about marketing, it's not about communication, it's about understanding that person or people that you're trying to change or organization that you're trying to change, and using that to help make change more likely.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye.